The Atlanta Hawks, their season, unfortunately, is over. Congrats to the Suns and the Bucks for making the NBA Finals. I'll probably do a Finals preview video coming up this week. But in this video, we're going to be talking about Atlanta because I think they're in a really interesting spot. It was a surprising end to their season. For them to get all the way to the conference finals was an incredible accomplishment. And I think a lot of the conversation now is going to be about the fact that this team is going to be back year after year after year. However, in contrast to some teams that are in this situation, typically, Atlanta actually has a lot of decisions to make about this roster, not only this offseason, but a few in the following that could really impact their ability to actually get back to this point. So the future of their team and what they're going to do moving forward is actually really, really interesting, and that's what we're going to be talking about in today's video. So those things said, what's up, fellas? My name is Tucker. Let's talk about Atlanta. So first of all, obviously, this is a team that I've been a huge fan of. Love Trae Young, love the Hawks. I've always believed in them, even when other people doubted them. I kind of stood behind the Hawks and, really believed. Okay, of course, that's not true. Those of you guys have been paying attention. I've made multiple videos this year talking about how I didn't like what Atlanta did with their roster. I didn't like Trae Young. I thought he was annoying the way that he played basketball. And I've already made my give credit to the Hawks video. Fantastic accomplishment. All credit in the world to them. I was wrong about a lot of things. Congrats to Nate McMillan being a really good coach for them as well. But now we're going to talk about the roster itself. So let's look at the payroll. A handful of really interesting decisions to make over the next couple of years because the core of this team, the core of this Atlanta Hawks team is very, very obvious. You've got Bogdanovich and Gallinari, who they just signed last offseason. You've got Capella, who they got in a trade a couple years ago. It was fantastic for them. If there was fourth-team All-NBA for centers, Clint Capella might have made fourth-team All-NBA this year. DeAndre Hunter, Trae Young, Cam Reddish, John Collins, Kevin Huerter, that's the core of this team. Interestingly, every single one of these players that I just mentioned will be a free agent either this offseason, the following, or the year after that, with most of them, especially the younger guys, being free agents, restricted free agents this offseason or the following. The one that's the biggest immediate need as you look at their free agents for this offseason, you get guys like Tony Snell, Lou Williams, not a huge deal. You can bring those guys back. But John Collins, of course, is the big name here. He has declined multiple extensions, pretty big money extensions from Atlanta, including one during the year this year. John Collins believes he is a max contract level player. He has maintained that stance for a while now, and he wants to get a max contract and restricted free agency this offseason. Personally, I like John Collins. He's a forward that fits well with this group, is a good offensive player, can attack off closeouts because really developed as an offensive player from a shooting standpoint, is an incredible athlete at the rim. I don't want anything to do with paying John Collins a max contract. So if that's what John Collins wants to do, I would question the value I'd be getting in return for him, not only on an individual basis, just in a vacuum. Is John Collins worth a max contract? To me personally, no. But then when you look at the rest of this roster and some of the other extensions that are going to be coming up, Trae Young, Kevin Huerter, Cam Reddish, DeAndre Hunter, assuming those guys continue to grow and develop, of course, Trae's going to get his max extension. I don't want to be paying John Collins a max in general, but especially not when I have all these other guys coming up for extension. So if I'm Atlanta, I'm looking at this situation, I'm saying, John, we'd like to keep you. You're not getting a max. If you want to go out in restricted free agency and try and get a max contract, then we'll talk about it then, and maybe we match it because we don't want to lose the asset. We could look to trade him down the road or sign and trade him. But that's a huge, huge decision, a weirdly huge decision for a team that was as successful as Atlanta is and has as much upside as they do with the growth and development of these young players. Not having these guys signed to extensions leaves some things up in the air here, so I'm really interested to see what they end up doing with John Collins. Beyond that, like I said, this offseason, the free agency stuff, really not that big of a deal. Let's just currently operate under the assumption that they do re-sign John Collins to some kind of significant deal. That's going to take up pretty much all of their cap space for this offseason. You can see they're at about $93 million in payroll. That gap between that number and what the salary cap is going to be for this upcoming season is going to be made up by John Collins' new contract, assuming that he does sign one. If he does not sign one, they'll have the opportunity to go out and add some guys in free agency, and maybe that is the avenue they should advocate for, is sign and trading John Collins, going out and getting somebody that can space the floor and can shoot for them to kind of fill that role, and then just continue to grow and develop the young players without having a bigger contract on the roster. Other guys to pay attention to here as we move forward. Trae Young, of course, is going to get his max contract extension. He's going to start making $30+ million, not next season, but the following. That new extension will kick in. I'm sure he'll sign it very soon. Kevin Huerter is another guy that is going to need an extension in that offseason, and the year after that, DeAndre Hunter and Cam Reddish. And so in But in a very weird way, like obviously there's potential and there's upside with this group, and every indication is we're going to see them be at the top of the Eastern Conference or near the top of the East for years and years and years. When you look at the age of these players, John Collins 23, Cam Reddish 21, Trae Young 22, DeAndre Hunter 23, Bogey 28, Capella 27. They've got plenty of opportunities to grow and develop. But the question is, who do they want to keep? Can they afford to keep all of them? And if the answer to those questions are no, who do they move? Who do they prioritize? Of course, they're keeping Trae. Do they prioritize keeping Kevin Huerter or Cam Reddish or DeAndre Hunter or Bogey or Gallinari? It seems like to me, the order of guys they would possibly sacrifice or get rid of would be Collins first this offseason, just because timeline-wise that makes the most sense. If someone else really wants John Collins, either he leaves or you sign and trade him. I don't think it's we have to keep John Collins at all costs thing this offseason for me personally, other than obviously you want to keep the asset. But if someone's signing John Collins to a max, I'm not positive that's an asset that I want to retain on a max contract. So it's Collins from a timeline perspective, but from a priority standpoint, Danilo Gallinari is the guy that would kind of be a casualty here if you do want to save money. Let's say they sign Collins to an extension this offseason, and then they go into next year and they've got Trae Young, they've got Kevin Huerter both signed to extensions as well. Their payroll starts to creep up towards the luxury tax, a pretty big number. Well, at that point, Danilo Gallinari's contract in the 2022-23 season will be non-guaranteed. They can buy him out. Essentially, Gallinari is an expired contract going into this upcoming season. He's a nice player for them, especially if Collins leaves. He's going to be a critical player. But if they do want to make sure that they're starting to save money for potential Hunter and Reddish extensions, I could see them potentially buying out Gallinari or just letting that contract run off in 23. Here's the interesting thing, though. Atlanta can kind of push this off. They can continue to wait this out. They can re-sign Collins. Of course, re-sign Young and Huerter. But once we get into that 2023 offseason is when things are going to get really interesting for Atlanta. Because Bogdan Bogdanovic has a player option for $18 million in that season. He could very well turn that down. At that point, DeAndre Hunter and Cam Reddish will both become free agents. And if we're assuming that at that point they would have already signed Trae Young, Kevin Huerter, and John Collins to extensions. Oh, by the way, Clint Capella would also be a free agent in that offseason. They're suddenly looking at having a couple of guys on pretty significant contracts in Huerter, Young, and Collins. And 4 players that are critical to this group also coming up for contracts all in the same offseason. They're going to be looking at a massive, massive amount of payroll at that point, which at the end of the day is going to happen when you become a really good team. But I don't know that that's something that a lot of people are necessarily anticipating right now when they're talking about the future of Atlanta. So the bottom line is, from a basketball perspective, they have an incredible amount of talent and upside. They have a fantastic future. Making the conference finals this early in the process is a great, great accomplishment. And they arguably could have made the finals. I won't go on my Bucks rant in this video. The Hawks arguably could have made the finals. If Trae Young was fully healthy, they probably would have made the finals. And that is a great, fantastic accomplishment. Just from a basketball perspective, it's great. But when you start to look at the logistics and the future of this group, it gets a little bit more murky. It's not so easy as let's re-sign this one guy in Trae Young and then we're going to be fine. You can make the argument that that's the case, but when you're looking at the way this team is currently constructed and the young players they have on this roster, there's going to be a good amount of expense in retaining these guys because they've done such a good job of drafting and bringing in young players and signing guys in free agency that they've got a lot of good players that they now need to pay, and trying to figure out who to prioritize, who to pick to keep long-term and who to potentially move on from is going to be a really interesting calculation for Atlanta that we're going to watch unfold over the next couple of seasons. Ultimately, this front office has shown an ability to put a good roster together, to be competent, and of course, Trae Young is the guy. They've done the hardest part. They have the number one guy that they need, the guy that serves the drink, the guy that does everything offensively. They just have to figure out what they want to do with the other pieces. Potentially, you could be looking at a situation where they're looking to package these young guys together and trade them away to another team. You're looking at a situation where maybe 1 or 2 of these guys get signed and traded because they want to maintain the value of that player via the assets they get in exchange without actually signing them to the big contract like we talked about with John Collins. But, for me personally, my preference would be to keep this group together because I think they all have skill sets that fit beautifully well with Trae Young being the number one guy, because I don't think Trae Young is necessarily like a 100% he's the guy no matter what. I think situationally you need to have the right players around him. You need to have another playmaker in Bogdan Bogdanovic that allows Trae Young to be an off-ball guy sometimes and to use his ability as an off-ball player as a threat. You need a 2-guard out there that can really shoot the basketball, that's got good size in Kevin Huerter. You need wings that can switch, can play up or down positions, can guard multiple levels. That's Cam Reddish. That's DeAndre Hunter. You need a great rim protector that can roll to the rim, be a great lob threat. That's Clint Capella. You need a guy guy at the 4 spot that can be someone that is incredibly devastating at the rim, but can also shoot threes. That's John Collins. This team is really well put together, and I'd like to keep that. I just wanted to highlight in this video, one, how well they've done this year, but two, how difficult it could potentially be from a financial perspective to continue to bring this team back year after year, because I think most people are going to look at this team and think, oh, this is a conference finals team for the next 4 years. And that might be true, but it's not going to be as easy as running it back year after year. They're probably going to have to start picking and choosing some guys unless they want to be at $180 million in payroll by 2023. And that may very well be the case, but it's a consideration to keep in mind how they're going to keep these guys together. But ultimately, it's a good problem to have, right? If you're the Hawks, you'd rather have so many good players that you don't know what to do with when it comes to re-signing them. This is something that happened with the Nuggets a couple of years ago, where they started shipping off guys like Malik Beasley that are talented players, but they just don't want to have to pay to retain them. Maybe that's the situation that Atlanta ends up in this year, because I didn't even mention Onyeka Okongwu, who was like the 6th pick in the draft last year. They've got a ton of depth, a ton of talent, a ton of youth that they're going to continue to grow and develop, and they've just got to figure out which guys they do or do not want to prioritize. But at the end of the day, like I said, it's a great situation to be in. Congrats to the Hawks for making it to the conference finals, 2 wins away from the NBA finals. Great season for them. Look forward to see what they can do moving forward with this roster. And as always, we'll continue to keep an eye on them. Yeah. With those things said, once again, my name is Tucker. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like rating on it. Consider subscribing to the channel. Check out more videos from me. The box is on screen as well for more NBA content every single day. Hope you guys have an awesome rest of your day, and I will see you all next time.